India from one of the largest exporter to one of the largest importer. Importer means an individual or a country that purchases product from other countries in order to sell them. An exporter means when an individual or a country that sells products to other countries in order to purchase it. From 0001 AD to 1700 AD, India was considered to be world's richest country. India is considered to be dominated by agriculture. In spite of the growth of modern industries other than agriculture, even today more than half of India's population is still engaged in agriculture sector. The other exports from India during the 18th century were opium, sugar, saltpeter, silk, raw cotton, rice and many more. Indian silk exports were responsible for many things. One of the most prominent would be the change in Western fashion, where women wore bulged fluffy gowns as we see in the cartoon Cinderella, shifted towards the comfortable silk and relatively lowered gowns. Sea route to India via the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa was discovered by Vasco da Gama in 1498. Later, even the European traders started to come to India and also made sea voyages to get their hands on spices and textiles for trading purposes. In the late 18th century, the East India Company showed interest in trading with India, which eventually led to territorial conquest, which resulted in India to be a colony of the British Empire. Economic situation of India was worsened by the British colonization. The decline in Indian economy came crashing down after the British left the country. India's economy was thriving and flourishing trade and commerce before the British colonization. In the beginning of the British colonization, India's GDP was 25% to 35% of the world's GDP. Once called as Sone ki Chidiya, which means that India was considered to be a golden bird. The GDP came crashing down to 2% by independence in 1947. In Britain's great rise over 200 years was in actual financed by its reputation in India. The premises of the Green Revolution in Britain were upon the deindustrialization in India. Deindustrialization did not just mean by decline in handicrafts or artisanal productions, which occurred all around the world due to the development of modern machine-based industries, but also due to colonization as we see in the case of India. Goods were exported and sold with restrictions that benefit the Britishers and not the Indian manufacturers, which pushed India towards agriculture and various low-paying jobs. Indian weavers made fine muslin which was said to be lighter than woven air. The British broke their handlooms, imposed tariffs and duties on India's clothing product, which obviously benefit the British. India's silk exports were responsible for many things. One of the most prominent would be the change in Western fashion, where women wore bulged fluffy gowns as we see in the cartoon Cinderella, shifted towards comfortable and relatively lowered gowns. They took raw materials from India and shipped back final clothes which flourished in world market, through which weavers in India became beggars and India from being a world famous exporter into an importer. The British was not only proud to loot India but also incorporated the Hindi word loot into their dictionary. This was said by Dr. Shashi Tharoor. By the end of 19th century, India became the Britain's cash cow. It also became biggest purchaser of British goods and also highest number of British civil servants. We paid for our own oppression. This was said by Dr. Shashi Tharoor again. Whereas now we see how Western countries practice soft diplomacy in India by controlling them ideologically with Western clothes, such as denims, t-shirts, etc. Western food and beverages, such as Domino's, KFC, etc. The very example could be how English has been adopted and practiced throughout. Not only that, but the fact how a person who struggles with English is criticized in the modern society. The Indian jute mill industry was the largest in the world in terms of the amount of raw jute consumed for production by the end of 19th century. British favored themselves at the cost of Indian economy. The handicraft industry suffered the most due to British colonization. When we see around, we can point 7 out of 8 things being manufactured by China. Holi is an Indian festival which is not at all celebrated by the Chinese, but the colors which are used by Indians to celebrate Holi are very much imported by India from China. Our clothing and food trends are highly influenced by Western cultures, which simply means how it is very easy to set up big foreign MNCs in the country for their own sake of benefit. In recent times, India is seen to be highly dependent on other countries. The following chart shows its recent dependencies. India is highly dependent upon Russia for its military supplies, China for its products, UAE for its petroleum fuels, and other countries for other such essential resources. Hence, through this observation, we can understand how India went from a large exporter to an importer, and the most prominent reason that stands out is the British colonialism.